Hello everyone, I'm Lex of Dead Gentry Collectibles, William, or Dead Gentry if you're just one word, Dead Gentry if you're searching on eBay, Dead Gentry on Etsy as well. And you can search for specific shop owners on eBay, which is something I only newly learned when setting up our eBay store. I didn't even know that was possible, that if you go to advanced search, you can go search for people, which is wonderful because now I can go search for all of my friends that have eBay shops. I finally figured out how. But today, since William's not here, I thought on the little side table, because we're setting up the big table for the next procurement video, on our little side table here, I thought I'd do a quick Fitz and Floyd video. People are always asking for specific company videos. Whenever I get a chance, I will try to slip them in. As I said, William's out shopping, so I have maybe half an hour to an hour to quickly make a little video for you all. Very popular brand, Fitz and Floyd. I think I've been requested to speak more of it 3 times now already, and our YouTube channel, I think, has been up for a month or 2. So, since 1960, still going strong today. Google them right now. You're going to see a beautiful modern splash page, right? That's what that home page is called, splash page, of products that you can order new right now. So this is not one of those companies that is out of business or discontinued or retired, although a lot of their product lines are. So they talk a little bit about themselves. I remember their webpage very well because I was recently just looking on there to purchase a brand new gift for someone who collects one of their newer dinnerware services. So, and what does that tell you? So they've been in business for about half a century. They talk about how they create, ceramic hand-painted objects for presidential dinners. They've made presidential dinner services. They've made Queen Elizabeth II's tea service. I think they mentioned that on their page. And they talk about their products being whimsical. And they are. That's a beautiful word for it. Another adjective that we would apply to it in the vintage collectibles industry would be kitsch. Very bright colors, very fun, very playful, sometimes large figures or forms proceeding out of other forms. So if you think about their past, current used resale markets, highly popular. Very collectible item, very collectible producer. So, and one thing I appreciate about them a lot is, unlike a lot of other companies, they have made a real effort since, I want to say, 88 through now. We're in the 2020s, but they made a real push to get everything in-house in the USA. So whereas a lot of other companies will stamp USA, meaning the last part of a process has been completed in the USA, or maybe that just the hand-decorated detailing on side of on a ceramic piece is done in the USA. But not discussing where those products are actually produced in the first steps of the process. Fitz and Floyd has made a real effort, and as of now really are designing. They have artisan designers that design in the USA, and then those designer ideas, those beautiful sketches, will go to pottery throwing studios, and then it's created here, molded here, thrown here, and then kilned here as well, and then also decorated. So to keep the entire production in-house. Nothing against other countries, but when you have a company that makes a real effort to do everything in-house from one localized point of infrastructure, you tend to see better quality. It's not as sporadic, it's not as spread out, you're not having things shipped back and forth. So to people that are into collectibles, better quality is always a good thing, especially when we're evaluating collectibles over time. And I really appreciate too, they're very above board with their California Privacy Act page, which sometimes those legalese things can be very difficult to understand. Companies will go out of their way to make stuff like that. Like disclosure is difficult to understand. Fitz and Floyd, if you have a moment, go look at their California Privacy Act. Even if you don't live in California, even if you don't live in the USA, they make their disclosure, it's like a flow chart. They break it down into a graph and in the most simple terms for the consumer to understand. When I see something like that inside of a company or a producer, I know then they're going to be very, transparent and above board about other things as well. And it creates a lot of trust in the consumer. It speaks very highly of the company itself when they do something like that. So that's another way to kind of assess, is this a good brand? Is this a good company moving forward into the future, maybe to collect from? That's kind of one of those things that you learn to get an eye for. When they're very transparent, when they really do want the consumer to understand what their goods are and how every part of their company works, it's usually a step in the right direction. So, Dallas-based, they began as an import company. By the 1960s, they were designing their own ceramic pieces. So the imports, that didn't last very long. They really did very quickly, within a few years, start trying to make their own things. And by the 1970s, they had hand-painted ceramic gift production lines thriving. So within 10 years of when they started making ceramics, then they started hand-painting them, then they started producing gift lines. They make dinnerware, tea services, all manner of collectibles. Many collectors are going to recognize them on a shelf. Say if you're looking at a lovely vintage store, you're in an antique shop, you're going to know Fitz and Floyd, usually by their animal-themed teapots of the 70s, very popular. And we have an example of that here. It's kind of far back on the table. Let me move this dish carefully. William's better at remembering to move things around while he's talking. I'm not nearly as good at that for some reason. So here's an example. That beautiful animal-themed teapot, the Rio Rita. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And then moving forward from the 70s into the 1990s, they started creating all sorts of things. So those earlier gift lines got expanded in the 90s, and they started making Christmas ornaments, snow globes, planters, trinket boxes, mugs, bells, cookie jars, soup tureens, very, very famous Fitz and Floyd swan soup tureen, for instance, pitchers, also there's a rooster, I believe, napkin rigs, figurines, candlesticks, pot de creme, full nativity scenes. You get the idea. If you name it, right? If there's a Christmas, Easter, or Halloween related item that can be cast and killed in ceramic, Fitz and Floyd likely makes it. And most of the 1970 pieces were made in Japan. So if you see Japan on the bottom of a Fitz and Floyd, that's not a bad thing. That is where the 1970 pieces and earlier tended to be produced. They're not anymore. So when I was talking about everything being in-house, they made a real push for that and a real movement, but it was in the late 80s. So maybe if you see Japan, that can help you date an item, but also no, it doesn't lessen the quality. Fitz and Floyd has had incredible quality since they began, and those earlier pieces from the 70s and pre-70s often made in Japan. Sometimes we'll even say Japan on the bottom. If you're just like, oh, well, this says Japan, it can't be Fitz and Floyd. That's not true. So I don't want to confuse anyone. And sometimes a mark will say that from the 70s and sometimes it won't. So sometimes it doesn't mean that it wasn't made in Japan or wasn't made in the 70s if it doesn't say Japan. Their marks, to discuss their marks a little bit, I can show you a few of them here. This is called an embossed or engraved mark. See how it's actually indented or impressed into the ceramic itself? This one happens to be under the glaze. They're not all under glaze marks. This one happens to be under that glaze. And you see that very iconic, that FF with that kind of font. That's their font. That's their logo. That FF that's how you know them. This one happens to have a copyright symbol. That copyright symbol tells you it was made 1955 or later. That copyright symbol tells you that about any vintage, antique, or collectible object, because that is when the law came into effect. So they started drafting the law, I think it was in 1952, I want to say. Don't quote me. But it came into effect on the open markets, on markets where businesses began using it, which of course they wanted to copyright their works, so they began using it as quickly as they were allowed to. And that was in 1955. So whenever you see that little C in a circle, that little iconic copyright mark, that is what that means, that whatever you're holding was made 1955 or later. Just pro tip, I don't know. Hopefully a lot of people already know that, but if you didn't, hopefully that helps a little bit. So when it comes to hand engraved marks that spell out the company name, not every Fitz and Floyd piece is going to have that. Smaller pieces will often just have a label with a copyright symbol and just a capital FF. And here, see this? So not embossed, not engraved, still an authentic Fitz and Floyd. Having a little bit of trouble getting it to focus. But see that? That black ink? Again, copyright, it was made after 1955, iconic FF, done in that style. So if someone says Fitz and Floyd has to be an embossed or imprinted mark, no, it doesn't. See, here's another example. So here you have the copyright, so 55 or after. 1987, lovely. Sometimes they do actually put the years. Older pieces, I have seen ink stamped with the years done in Roman numerals of Fitz and Floyd. So if you see that, that could very well be a Fitz and Floyd object. And then again, that FF, very kind of, you always see that, but this is what I mean a little bit. They won't always spell out the whole name. Sometimes you'll just see FF and not Fitz and Floyd written all the way out, especially on smaller pieces. The older pieces tended to have paper labels. This one, again, sometimes, as I said, sometimes they'll say where they were made or the year. Total. So this one had the year, and this is an emboss imprint, but doesn't have the origin of manufacture. This one has the origin of manufacture, China, but absolutely does not have the year. And again, you know it was made after 55, but now you don't know the year. You do know it was made in China. And this is, even without, I wish I got to get this to focus a little bit better. Even without the FF, you do know that this is a Fitz and Floyd. Because look at the font here. See that? Okay. So they're not, the thing with Fitz and Floyd, they use a lot of back stamps. A lot of them. So, and honestly, I haven't seen that many fakes. I imagine they're out there. I do. I just haven't seen them. And I also imagine that if you were to see a fake, see, here's one with just the paper label. More modern. See if I can get that to focus again for you. Much more modern, just a paper label. See this one? That iconic FF. This one does say Fitz and Floyd. It does say fragrance. It talks about, Texas in Louisville now, but they did originally start in Dallas. So, and again, you have a little plastic sticker down here, handcrafted in China. But here, so no imprint, no impress, no ink stamp. When this paper and little plastic label gets lost, this will still be a Fitz and Floyd product, but you won't know based on any stamps or marks. So I've seen people write on the internet, oh, it has to say this, or it has to say, no, it doesn't. Fitz and Floyd has used all manner of stamps, back stamps, embossed, paper, ink, underglaze, overglaze. Just please be aware of that. Don't walk away from an authentic object because it doesn't have the mark you're expecting to see. And I imagine if you were looking at a fake, it would be fairly obvious. Generally, a fake is going to have very low color quality, very low glaze quality, very low paint quality. So it won't look like these. It won't look bright and clean and with the high shine glaze and very well done. It'll probably lack a lot of luster. That would be my guess. As I said, I haven't seen a lot of Fitz and Floyd fakes. I haven't even seen a lot of pieces trying to kind of look like Fitz and Floyd. That's just not something I've personally come across. I imagine they're out there though. So, but I wouldn't base it, I would base it off the quality. I wouldn't base it off stamps. A lot of people over rely on stamps a lot of the time. You don't want to do that. Sorry, I'm gonna get a sip of water here. You want to get a feel for what pieces are. I find that that's the most useful thing over time. So let's see, this little tulip swan that's sitting up front here, a little candle holder, some evaluations really quick. Video's already getting a little bit long. See these lovely colors and the attention to detail here? This is a really nice one. 40 plus on that, $40. There's a larger soup tureen, it's almost, I want to say it's like 10 inches long with a large swan on top of it from this same line. It looks very similar, but it's a soup tureen. It's taller and it has the lid form that comes off. That's about $150. If you have the tureen with the ladle and the matching very large platter that goes under it and all three pieces fit together. It's very pretty. Again, you could Google search this. You'd be looking at $180 plus. That's how much that is worth. If you own that piece, that's a current evaluation of that piece. I saw one sell for $182 in December of 2021. So it could actually be a little bit more now than it was then. You have things like Santa Enchanted pictures, where it's a tall picture of Santa Claus called the Enchanted line very often. Those go for $100 to $140. Leaping reindeer candle holders. very much Christmas themed, Christmas decor. Those go for around $80. The larger ones, they're smaller and larger pieces. The 11-inch reindeer figures, I've seen those go for $180 more than once. So when I'm talking about what things go for as well, these aren't guesses. These are, I have to watch the markets to know what items' current evaluations are. These are receipts. These are what these items are selling for or have sold for. So if anything, given current inflation, if something sold 5 years ago and I'm saying 80 plus, that means it was 80 then. You could probably get more now, if not significantly more now. And I can't always keep track of when the last time something sold is, but I do know for a fact that I saw the large platter, the swan platter soup and tureen. I remember that selling for $182 in March of 2021. I remember it because I was watching the sale. You only see all three pieces come to market in very fine condition, maybe once or twice a year. So I remember that one. So don't think that these are just guesses that I'm throwing in the dark. If you have something like a Worth Point account, go and check what I'm saying. You will see that there. You also have to keep in mind Worth Point does not hold the entire internet's database of sales records. It doesn't, for instance, show, to my knowledge, Etsy, which has become a very large selling platform. It does show eBay, which is helpful. And they do keep, I think, 5 to 10 years of records, which again, helpful. So, but when you're looking at that, you have to remember there are other sites. eBay is by far not where you're going to get the most money for most items. More boutique platforms tend to do better, especially with vintage items and collectibles. So those records, which I do happen to have access to, and I sell on Etsy myself, so I know what specific items sell for, they tend to go for higher on those platforms. And when you're using, say, Worth Point or checking eBay sales, throat's a little rough. You have to keep in mind, don't just scroll the first few pages. Sorry, another little sip of water there. My throat got very scratchy for a moment. So don't just scroll. If you're looking at eBay, if you're looking at Worth Point, don't just scroll through 2020 or 2022 or 2021, and it will take you a while. I use Worth Point. I add it on to other records, sales, and documentation that I have. There's also things like brick and mortar sales that are important to keep an eye on, and auctions that are very much not ever going to be seen in eBay or Etsy or Mercari or Poshmark. And then there's also records as far as private sales and transactions, where sometimes things can go for quite a bit more, including charity auctions that are held in person. High event charity auctions, people are more willing to open their wallets. You will tend to see things go for higher levels, and you can really get a feel for how much would someone be willing to spend on the best day of that item's market. And you can sometimes see that at a charity auction. So if you really want to get into evaluating objects better, these are all things that you should kind of keep in mind and try to find a way to reference. But if you're just using something like Worth Point or just using something like eBay, sales, comparable sales, what items have sold for, keep everything I'm saying in mind. Realize that those are not the only prices, and scroll. Don't just do the first 5 to 10 pages on Worth Point looking for one item. Keep digging. Go back years. You'll start to get a sense that just because it sold for $12 here and $20 there, and then it sold for $15 here but $32 there, and then you scroll back a few more pages, it sold for $50 here, and then it sold for $55, and then it sold for $48, and then it sold for $65. You see, that gives you a better sense. If you only scroll the first few years, you're not going to see that. You're not going to see what an item is actually worth. So keep that in mind, especially if you happen to have that tool as a resource. Make the best use of that resource possible. Take the time to scroll through, spend 10 minutes doing your homework. It's going to be worth it. And when I'm talking about evaluations and prices, I am referencing in-person charity auctions, in-person private sales, which very few records are ever kept of, brick and mortar sales that I have access to, that I can look at the records of, Etsy sales, which I personally, again, have access to, that I have the record of, Worth Point sales, eBay comps. I'm thinking of all of those things. So when I say that, the swan with the matching ladle and platter will go for $182, That's a fact. It's a receipt. It's what it's sold for. It's what the item sells for. It's not me guessing in the wind here. So moving on, large angel vase. Fitz and Floyd does a large angel vase that always sells for $100. Every time I see it move for $100. And you don't think you'll see it move online very much, because that is not one that I ever see really come up on the internet for sale. I think the people who tend to have that piece tend to be older and not as likely to use something like eBay. But it is out there, and it's $100 Fitz and Floyd vase in the form of an angel with these big wings. It's very cool. Large reindeer figures, again, the 10 to 11 inch figures, those tend to go for $180, so almost $200. If you're a collector, I know I'm not moving these around as much as I should be. I kind of just stand back and get like involved in my head, in my own little world. That's why I like never remember to move anything around the way William does. We just have like a different method of doing this. And honestly, I wish mine was a little more interactive and like less focused like his, because it's more fun, and it's more fun to watch the video later. Anyway, but if you're a collector, I would not mix and match too much, unless you're mix and matching, saying like an eclectic teapot collection. So you're just getting all Fitz and Floyd teapots. So you're narrowing it down in that way. But I mean, like, don't try to get everything that Fitz and Floyd makes, because they make quite a lot of items. I want to say they do like something like 400 to 500 production pieces a year, which are then, produced at scale, each one of them. So collecting them across the board would be very difficult and kind of messy. When you create a collection, you want it to be a worthy collection that creates value over time. So narrow your field a bit when it comes to Fitz and Floyd. Animals do well. Holiday theming does well. The like finer, more refined, if you're going modern, if you want to buy new and modern off their site now, I would say the very elegant dinner services would be my guess to tend to accrue value into the future. Excuse me, my throat is just, I think there's something like I'm allergic to in the air today, and it's made its way into this room. I think it's one of these trees with these white flowers outside that smells kind of funny. Anyway, moving on. Excuse me. What else could you collect? If say like just collect holiday mantle decorations just for Christmas, or that sort of a thing, that sort of a collection would do very well over time. Holiday theming, I would lean into that. Seek out maybe a handful of Halloween themed and Christmas themed cookie jars or pieces to add to your larger vintage collection of cookie jars. That would be a great way to add value to a collection. Or maybe just their Christmas ornaments, maybe just one style of their Christmas ornaments or Christmas bells. That could be a way to go about starting a collection. Just animal themed decor, like just for maybe dinner service, maybe just table decor. So you see what I mean? Try not to do a little bit of everything. You'll get overwhelmed. One of my favorite curations that I have ever seen is from their 70s production line forward. So it spans about 4 decades. My friend has a beautiful collection where he's amassed almost all of these. It's just coastal and seaside. I think it's called the Fish Market line, and some of the Fragrance line, and some of the Classics line. So it's different production lines, but it's all seaside, like seashore orientated theming, where he's collected all of those pieces. So it's just a range of different figures and bowls and boxes to decorate one of his sitting rooms. Not William, it's someone else I know. But because he happens to lives in a coastal area. And it's just so beautifully well done. It's magical. When you walk into this person's sitting room, past the foyer of their village house. So, looking at the space that they've done, like the world a service when you're looking at this collection, and then it's going to be, his collection is going to live long past him. Someone's going to buy it as an estate collection. And it's going to be very appreciated and worth then even more than it is now, even though it's accruing worth more and more. He's been collecting since the 70s, even the tiny little smallest pieces, like little crab trinket boxes and things. bringing all these things together. And he chose to do that when he began. I don't want to give names, but because at the time, people weren't paying attention so much with Fitz and Floyd to the seashore themed pieces. So he loved them, and they were less expensive, and that's how he started his collection. And then they continued making, you know, like for instance, like this is a potpourri dish from the fragrance collection. Let me see if I can move some of these pieces away. But they didn't just do plates and bowls and boxes. They actually started making, you know, like tartar serving sauce dishes and things like this. Like this is a fragrance from their fragrance collection. It's for holding loose potpourri. But they did keep continuing to create things with, you know, little lobsters with their heads stuck in shells, and little clam jewelry boxes, and big bowls like this with seashells. So he was able to amass this collection, mixing and matching all their different product lines, and it's spectacular. There's no other way to talk about it. Now, I'm not saying that you have to pass up the opportunity to add, say, a beautiful couple $100 cookie jar to your collection if you have the chance and that's your thing and you want that Fitz and Floyd cookie jar. But if you're just starting a new collection, there's other ways to go about it than just seeking out all the most expensive items, right? You could be like my friend. You could start now looking for less expensive, less paid attention to themed pieces to begin a collection rather than, you know, following the pack. And that collection could be very worthy over time. So that's something to think about. Half the pieces in the Seashore collection I've seen in his collection, they're, you know, $50. They were, when he purchased them, $50 or less. And now, you know, the little things like rowboats with pelicans sitting on them, and little like he has seahorse coffee cups where the handle is the seahorse. It is the most enchanting thing. It's like being in the Little Mermaid movie when you walk into this sitting room, but it's also kind of like being in the Pike Place fish market, because it's not all like very like so whimsically feminine, say. So there's also like little crabs and lobsters and pelicans, and it's amazing. And now his collection, which he started for not that much, is insured for thousands, because he took the time to bring all these pieces together, and some of them have accrued value over time, and some of the larger vases have become very sought after. So he started because he loved it, and he started with what he started with because it was less expensive. You could do that too if you wanted. You can start with smaller pieces. Fitz and Floyd is one of those wonderful companies where they do have some pieces that are less expensive. They have a whole, as I said, 500 production pieces a year, I think. So you can start with less expensive pieces. It's a way to get into it if you enjoy it. It's one of the things that's very cool about them. They don't just produce, you know, $100 objects. And William and I we don't just get the big fancy, say like classic lines teapots like this piece here. We will go out of our way to find smaller pieces, like smaller candle dishes and things, you know, that are maybe $30 and less to put in the shop, because we like doing that. We like putting less expensive items. We like having a range of items in there for everyone. So I think we have a few of their smaller plates in there right now. So if you don't have a lot of money, Fitz and Floyd can be one of those things that you can get into. This banana teapot, I feel like I should be giving a few more like direct evaluations for all the resellers out there. This is the Rio Rita. I think we showed this one in another video. This one has a little chippy whippy right here. See that? It's missing a bit of his orange glaze, or her. A little chippy whippy back here as well. I'm not quite sure how one tells on a parrot whether it's a boy or a girl, but very cool. This is what we're talking about when we're talking about whimsical animals, you know, of the 70s with Fitz and Floyd. This is a $50 teapot in perfect condition, a bit less if it has two little chips like this one does. But that's of this year, 2022. That could go up, that could go down. That's just a current evaluation of the product. Again, called the Rio Rita. If you want to go Google Lens it or search it, it's a little rarer. One comes on the market every 4 months or so. It's not like you can find one or two of them every day that you can buy online reused. It doesn't quite work that way. Once this one sells, it can be, sometimes you can have to wait a few months to find another one. This piggy back here, since we're talking about animals, the very iconic Fitz and Floyd animals, this little piggy is a sugar bowl. And there's another one of these little figures that I've seen where he has little glasses, but the glasses are on, not on his snooter, not on his boop snooter. Boop. Anyway, but the glasses are up here. I love these things. They're so cute. You can't help yourself. And he has a little red bowler hat. So if you wanted, you could, one of the fun things about Fitz Floyd is you can get this and then you can start seeking out the other pieces. And there is another piece that I've seen before and it's very cute. And he's holding his little teacup, same way. They're charming. They're really cute. They're really pretty. That one's late 80s. The 70s pieces I find tend to have a little bit less, they're like bolder. They don't have quite these tiny, they have beautiful like hair and painting details, but they don't always have like very small eyes and things. Like they're big, bold roosters and things generally. Or the pigs will be more rounded forms going back, but the same bold, bright colors, same attention to detail, same quality, beautiful hand painting. Little piggy, about $25. And if you wanted, this would you could just collect pigs. Like if you wanted to start a collection, they have pig table decor, figurines, taurines, boxes, plates, vases, jars, piggies, everything. This one happens to be a little part of a tea service, a little sugar bowl. Little sugar cubes in there would be, with a little pair of tongs, would be absolutely divine. Again, this is a potpourri holder. This is from the fragrance line. See, everyone can get a really good sense of that, and some of the stamps. Can't show them enough so that everyone knows what they're looking for. This is one of the larger ones. They come smaller. The larger ones tend to go for a bit more. In good condition, tend to go for a bit more. This isn't actually damaged. This is just debris. I can see it getting all over my gloves as I wipe at it. But they have these 3D sort of forms that rise out of the surface. Very pleasant, very colorful. Again, they're fun. Their pieces are just fun. The larger potpourri bowl like this, $25 plus. If you can match it with the candle holders and Oceana trinket boxes from a different product line, you could probably get a bit more per piece. Again, if you bring these things together, you can sometimes sell them not as a bundle, but like as a set, as a collected set. The collection can sometimes make each piece worth a little bit more. You see the same thing, say, with vintage porcelain in China, right? Same idea here, but just by itself, 25 plus. So you don't have to have more than one. Let's see, the teapot from the Classics collection. Let's bring that one back. Everyone can see this one. Now, with a lot of teapots, you have to be careful with ceramic teapots when you're lifting those lids to remember to duck it out, right? You got to angle out and angle in, because otherwise you can break these beautiful little safety latches. It's not even a latch. It's just a little ceramic, like, one-way hinge. So, another view of the stamp there. See all these little details. We sold a Fitz Floyd trinket box, which is often mislabeled as a sugar bowl. It's a little cupcake with a little gingerbread man on it not that long ago. And you see these attentions to details on that piece. When you take off the top, you'll see this beautiful banding of gold and color work on the inside that's hidden by the top. So it's like a reveal where you find another little element. Fitz Floyd does that sort of thing quite a bit. So you will see how these are banded and it's tucked away under here. It's just one more little element, one more little detail. So this is from the Classics collection. Classics collection does pretty well. Teapots do pretty well by Fitz Floyd. 35 to 38 plus shipping. Again, it depends where you're buying it from. If you're buying it from eBay, you're probably going to see $35 and then have to pay the shipping on top of that. That is a base price for this piece in good condition. And there's a 9-piece set with this that can go with it. There's a whole tea service that you can collect or find to go with this specific teapot. And there's a Fitz Floyd Venetian like fruit style bowl. It's like really tall. I want to say it's like 11 inches wide and like 16 inches tall. So like over a foot tall. It's like a Roman colonnade pillar down here, and then it's a bowl, and the lid of the bowl is like all these like real sized fruits, like ceramic fruits that create the top of this structure. It's a beautiful piece. If you have a minute, if you want to go Google search something, I'd search that. I'd search the Venetian fruit bowl by Fitz and Floyd. Those go for $140 plus. And that's not a Christmas themed cookie jar. So I know a lot of people talk about Fitz and Floyd, just go get Christmas things, just get cookie jars. Some of their cookie jars and Christmas themed objects, like a lot of their objects, do incredibly well, but they're not the only objects by Fitz and Floyd that are worth collecting, that are valuable, and that are worthy of your time and your collections. I have a friend that just has like wizard themed things. And she has been seeking out the Fitz and Floyd. It's like a frog. It's a ceramic frog. It might be a cookie jar. I know it's a canister. It has a lid, but it's just like a little frog with a wizard hat. And she has not been able to buy one. Every time she goes to buy one, it goes to auction or it sells immediately for $250. So she keeps keeping her eye out for it. She wants one, but she hasn't been able to get her hands on one yet. So that isn't a Christmas themed, reindeer or sleigh. That is a frog with a wizard's cap. So there are items out there by Fitz and Floyd. They're not what you think they are all the time, and they can be worth quite a bit of money. Although to be fair, that the Santa sleigh cookie jar goes for $250. It's that very famous Fitz and Floyd cookie jar is worth $250. Santa sleigh. Easter bunny large canisters and cookie jars tend to go for $90. There's 8 to 10 of them that I've seen that all kind of stick in that price range. Jack-o'-lanterns, like the pumpkins with the cat on top by Fitz and Floyd. Not really large cookie jars, but kind of like a medium size. Those go for $70 to $90. So I hope this in some way has been helpful to everyone. This one's my favorite on the table, I have to say. Like, I know most people are going to be attracted to the tulip swan. The tulip swan pieces are very, very collectible. They're pretty sought after. But when it comes to the table for me today, it's not even about the teapots. It's about this little piggy. It's so cute. Okay, I hope that helps. Cheers, everyone.